Here is Bryan Thomas, Senior Solutions Architect at WhereScape. Got a great session coming up for you now. He's been building data warehouses since the 90s. Sorry to date you there, Bryan. And he's been an Oracle DBA for well over 20 years now. And he started his career at NASA, another well-known government organization, maintaining launch trajectory programs, and has worked at large financial services companies, government agencies, through startups as well. And today he's going to be talking to us about implementing cloud data warehousing to improve agility and cost effectiveness, scalability, and performance. So Bryan, it's great to have you with us again. Go ahead and take it away.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Bobby. My name is Bryan Thomas. As he said, I'm a senior solutions architect for WhereScape, and I'm just excited to talk to you about taking your data warehouse to the cloud. Hopefully I can show you how you can, reduce your cost and improve your agility, performance, scalability, that sort of thing. So let me tell you about me. So first of all, I've been around the block a few times. I studied at Texas A&M University. I studied computer science there. If you're a college football fan, you know that we're number 5 right now, sitting there on the outside looking in on the playoffs. So it's kind of funny. As Bobby said, I worked on at NASA straight out of college, working on launch trajectories for the space shuttle. This included the Hubble Space Telescope. So I worked on that project a little bit. I built my first data warehouse on a tandem system at USAA in the 90s. And I also worked on the health data repository for the Veterans Administration. I helped with cloud data warehouses, especially for Oracle, and then just cloud databases for OpenText. And then I joined WhereScape a couple of years ago, and I've been automating data warehouses ever since. And also, I'm a photographer in my spare time, so just had to show off one of my pictures there. So let's see, why do you want to move your data warehouse to the cloud? So that's really an important topic these days. Companies are looking at going to the cloud because they want to free up themselves from having to run. They want to be able to focus on running their business and not running a room full of servers, and allowing their business intelligence teams to deliver that faster, better insight that we're all looking for. Now, why is that so important? Well, there's a lot of pressure to modernize these days. Everybody wants their systems to be modernized, whether that's the stockholders, the board of directors, the C-level executives. Everyone's putting pressure on IT to modernize. So the first way they're pressuring to modernize is elasticity. So one of the biggest reasons that most people move to a data warehouse in the cloud is cost. So storing data on premise in your own data center can get very expensive, and expanding your data footprint often makes it harder to support those ever changing analytic needs. So why is that? Well, with an on-premise data warehouse, it's very hard to scale quickly your compute and storage quickly and easily. And typically, if you need more storage, the compute comes along with it, and you end up having to pay for both. And in addition, you need to purchase as much compute as you need for your peak times. So if you're a retail company worried about how much compute you need for, say, a couple of weeks ago, Black Friday and Cyber Monday, or well, tough luck. You're stuck with that compute for the entire year. Fortunately, it doesn't have to be that way, because the best kinds of data warehouse systems can instantly and flexibly scale to deliver as much or as little compute as needed whenever you need it. And because the compute and storage are separate for most of these, you only need to purchase what's essential. And lastly, you don't need to have a bunch of upfront costs. So hardware, server rooms, networks, and additional staff, all of that is not necessary. So the next pressure to modernize that is coming up is agility. So deploying your conventional data warehouse can take at least a year and extend into multiple years before you can extract that insight from your data. And done right, a cloud data warehouse can be up and running in weeks, in just a few, maybe months. Therefore, most of the time required to get up and running should be spent extracting data from your other sources and configuring your front-end analytics to help extract that business value from your data warehouse. In addition, data warehouse automation provides IT and business teams the ability to develop and prototype new services, products, without having to spend a lot of money on that infrastructure. Now, the third reason to modernize is access. So we know everyone wants to have it on their fingertips, whether on their cell phone, their laptop, at home, at work, in the car. They just need to have that data. And putting the data in the cloud enables companies to give their analysts access to real-time data from numerous sources, allowing them to run that better analytics quickly. And this also allows your IT teams to focus their attention and resources on some of the more strategic aspects of providing value to the business. So, performance, their pressure, everyone wants it better, faster, quicker. The performance is very much a pressure on all IT these days. So a cloud data warehouse allows the queries to be run more quickly than they are against your traditional on-premise data warehouse for lower costs. Now, I include uptime and availability under performance here, especially maybe what's happened in the last week with solar winds and things like that. If your system is down, your performance is zero. A lot of companies have had to rebuild servers because of some of the breaches that have happened. But the traditional warehouses just can't keep up with the pressure to modernize. So the cloud is becoming critical for most companies. Now let's talk about a couple of the popular cloud data warehouses. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Amazon Redshift. So Redshift's approach could be described as a platform as a service, a PaaS, but Redshift is highly scalable and it's provisioning clusters of nodes to customers as their storage and computing needs change. And each node has individual CPU, RAM, and storage space. But to set up Redshift, you must provision your cluster through Amazon Web Services, AWS, and Redshift has concurrent scaling that does allow users to automatically add clusters in times of high demand. Now, the next one I'd like to talk about is Google BigQuery. Perhaps the best thing about BigQuery's architecture is that you don't need to know anything about it. BigQuery is serverless, so the underlying architecture is hidden in a good way from the users. So BigQuery can scale to thousands of machines by structuring computations as an execution tree. It sends the queries through a root server, intermediate servers, and ultimately leaf servers with local storage. Now, the next one I want to talk about is a darling in the cloud business these days because they IPO'd a few months ago, and I don't know about you, but hopefully you've bought some of their stock and made some money off of it because it's really going up. But the reason is because it is a nice data warehouse platform. Snowflake separates storage, compute, and services into separate layers, allowing them to scale independently. And the automatically managed storage layer can contain structured or semi-structured data. And the compute layer, well, that's composed of clusters like everyone else, and each of which can access all the data, but they can work independently and concurrently. And so this enables the automatic scaling, distribution, rebalancing that they're really known for. Now, Snowflake is a data warehouse as a service, and it operates across multiple clouds, including AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. Now, the last one I'd like to talk about is Microsoft Azure Synapse. So Synapse is an elastic, large-scale data warehouse platform as a service, again, a PaaS, that leverages the broad ecosystem of SQL Server. So like other cloud storage and computing platforms, it uses a distributed MPP architecture and columnar data store. So it gathers data from databases and SaaS platforms into that one big, powerful, fully managed, centralized repository. Now, I did mention cluster and serverless, so let's get into that a little bit. So there are two main camps of the cloud data warehouse architectures. The first, older deployment architecture is cluster-based. So Amazon Redshift and SQL Server, which is Azure, which is the Synapse, and they fall into that category. And typically, clustered data warehouses are really, just some kind of a Postgres or SQL Server derivative. They're ported to run on the cloud services, and the other flavor, serverless, is it's more modern, and it counts Google BigQuery and Snowflake as examples. Essentially, serverless cloud data warehouses make the database cluster invisible, or it could be shared across multiple clients. So each of the architectures has pros and cons. So let's cover those a little bit. So let's consider elasticity. So from a clustered standpoint, the customer may need to expand or even contract their cluster size themselves. So with serverless, there is no cluster to manage. The queries are automatically scaled up and down up to some throttling point that you set. So if we look at management, you may have to manage your cluster health and capacity sometimes in a clustered environment, and managing that in the serverless is up to the cloud vendor. So as far as cost, this is where clustered may have an advantage. It depends if your pricing per node allows you to predict that pricing. So if that's something you really need, clustered is better than serverless. But the other advantage of serverless is you're just charged per query or utilization. So it's a little bit more difficult to predict, but the cost may change up and down. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about automation, how you can use automation for your cloud data warehouse, because um, the business expectations for that on-demand data, teams have been forced to transition their efforts to the cloud. And so to present the data projects in a consumable way, then automation really does help with your provisioning to the cloud. So Gartner had a whole report on data warehouse automation, and there's these, I'm just going to hit some highlights. The paragraph is there, but basically data warehouse automation dramatically reduces the amount of work required to build, operate, and maintain your data warehouse. Automation helps with change management. The automation can enable DevOps, data ops, and other forms of that agile data management. And they can also extend beyond that central functionality of your data warehouse. So now here's another reason to automate, and that's the perception of IT success. So truthfully, you can see this. I've heard it a lot. 35% of the users rate their data projects unsuccessful, and 54% say their data needs improvement. So that's kind of scary. And then on top of that, you add what Gartner has to say here, that 50% of all data projects, they either fail or go wildly over budget. So that's where automation comes in. So now look at this slide. This is just where the modern data ecosystem is going. We talked about modernizing. You're going to end up with crazy stuff like Kafka buses and HDFS and in your data warehouse and data marts, and all this stuff comes together, and it is truly a revolution that is happening in the data landscape. And to be able to manage these complex landscapes, you need to use automation that helps with the modernization. So why did the traditional approach to the data infrastructure delivery, why does that fail? Well, hand coding and manual processes end up with your projects going over budget, being, not able to meet requirements and taking way too long. The traditional approach lacks agility, and it's hard to put those standardizations and best practices to work. And then we're going to touch on my favorite, which is documentation. I mean, when I was building data warehouses, I was running around with my hair on fire, and I was lucky to get it done on time. And then they say, "Hey, where's your documentation?" I have to go back and try to document things I did months ago. With automation, you can just push a button and create that documentation. And don't get me started with tribal knowledge. We talk about this all the time, that um, I like to say hit the lottery versus then get hit by a bus. But when that person chooses to leave the company, that was a key person with the knowledge, when that leaves and you do the traditional coding, hand coding, you're in a world of hurt. With automation, you can just pick up where they left off and continue on. So automation modernizes the warehouse by automating those data warehousing patterns. So you can deliver the project faster. It also reduces the complexity of going to those new technologies like the cloud, like going to the new technology, um, like semi-structured data and that sort of stuff. It also lessens the risk because you are able to adopt the best practices. And having agility is really what it's about these days. Especially, you look what happened with COVID. Nobody was expecting something like that, and suddenly you have to react to that very quickly. You need your data changed. You need to get control of your business to make it through. And then lastly, of course, automation helps deliver at less cost. So now with automation, you can leverage all of these new types of data warehousing patterns. So whether you use ETL or stream processing for your ingestion, or whether you're looking at cleansing the data, or maybe you're going to data vault with hash keys, or you're using a star schema or graph database, all these different patterns are out there, and automation allows you to use that. So now you're probably wondering, well, when's he going to get to the sales pitch part? So I do want to talk to you a little bit about why WhereScape can help you bring your data warehouse to the cloud through automation. So now that I like to think of the data warehouse lifecycle like building a building. So you've got your requirements, you build a blueprint, you create the framework, pour the concrete, put the plumbing in, paint it, then you put your now open sign, and then you get changes come from your users, and then obviously you need an operating manual for this. So what WhereScape does is we're a full life cycle automation. So we work, because of the metadata that we have, it ties together and automates the requirements, the logical and physical models, your ETL work, your deployment, your operations, and your documentation. So um, WhereScape allows you to automate your design. We have two different tools, WhereScape Red and WhereScape 3D. The 3D tool automates the design. It allows you to push a button and take 5 tables in a data vault design and turn them into 25 different tables, including the stage and the load tables and all your hubs, links, and satellites. We also obviously do automation of the development, creating the code that you need. We also automate the deployment. So when you deploy from dev to test to user acceptance testing to production, we automate that process for you as well. And my favorite is the documentation. So you just push a button at the end of each development cycle, at the end of each sprint, and technical documentation is created that shows how the data warehouse is built. And then, of course, operating, loading your data warehouse is automated as well. So WhereScape automation allows you to fast track your projects, limit your risk, lowers your costs, boosts your team productivity. It does support Agile and DevOps. And of course, we're talking about cloud today. It does minimize the complexity of going to the cloud, or maybe you just want to put your toe in the water of the cloud and you end up with a hybrid environment. And who knows what's going to be the hot new thing next year. So with data warehouse automation and WhereScape, we help you future-proof those new technologies as well. So who benefits from automation? So here's a few. This is my NASCAR slide. It just talks a little bit about it. And let me highlight a few. So this is a Vitaphone. So they decommissioned their ETL solution, and they accelerated their time to production from 6 months to 2 days, and they reduced their load time by 90%. So another one is Aptus Health. So we're seeing a lot more companies opting to do data vault modeling and migrating to Snowflake for maximum agility. And we have tools that can help you with both of these things. Aptus Health is a great example of a company who was using data vault on Snowflake. And we have a case study if you go to wherescape.com, and you can see the full case study. But they created their first data vault design in 3 days and their first production data vault within Snowflake within 3 months. Now, Helsana, they saved millions with automation. What used to take them 30 to 40 man days now takes 1 or 2. So now, don't just take my word for it, though. Let me go ahead and play a video of one of our customers' testimonies.
Xero is a heavily data-driven business, 1 million customers and a data-driven business, 1 million customers and a company of over 2,000 employees globally. We use data to drive our product design decisions, our sales and marketing, and customer support, and help them make better business decisions. We were using a SQL Server, which we basically outgrown.
I think customer challenges are what they've always been, and that is how do we deliver a successful data warehouse project on time, under budget, and deal with all the bad data quality issues we've got.
One of the challenges that the data services team faced was the transition of the whole company onto the Amazon AWS cloud platform whilst maintaining our operational capability. We trusted WhereScape Red, we already used it, we understood it.
So the immediate advantages of WhereScape Red are full automation when you're building a data warehouse. In 2 years' time, 50% of new data warehouses will be built in the cloud. That might even be a low number. I think that WhereScape does provide the best, fastest way to migrate an old legacy data warehouse into the cloud. We remove the technical IT complexities of doing a data warehouse and make it more about focusing on delivering business value. People want to do their projects faster. They want to do more. They want to deliver business value. And so customers invariably end up with a better warehouse than they'd have any other way in a fraction of the time with smaller, smarter teams.
WhereScape Red's code generation capabilities mean that our developers spend less time writing code for repeatable processes, so they can focus more on producing business logic that's unique to Xero. In the cloud, the cost is dramatically reduced, and also the time to increase the scale is a fraction of what it used to be, making our team more effective, being able to deliver solutions more quickly, and better value to the business for the work that we do. Being based on the cloud has enabled us to scale up our data capabilities to include big data and a data science function who are now analysing huge amounts of data to provide internal insights and also insights back to our customers. If we'd had to do this migration without WhereScape Red, could we have done it? Yes. Would it have taken much longer? Yes. Would it have been much harder? Yes, it would.
Okay, so now I've talked to you about cloud data warehousing today. Why cloud? There's a lot of pressures to modernize that are happening out there. So we talked about just different things that are going on: agility, flexibility, performance, and then why automation? We have that stigma out there that data warehouse projects fail quite frequently with the traditional approach. So using automation gets you past that, and hopefully also gets those top level executives to look at it and say, okay, I understand what's going on. Automation will help you get it done faster. And why WhereScape? Well, we've helped many move to the cloud. So automation really is the key to moving to the cloud. So if you can do it faster, you have happier end users, reduced cost with limited risk, with greater consistency and supportability, easier to evolve, expand, and port to those new platforms in the future. And as well as it's with automation, you can do documented and compliant at the end of the day. So that's what I have today. So if you need to, you can reach out to me at brian.thomas@wherescape.com, and my LinkedIn is rbryan.thomas. Do we have any questions, Bobby?
Yeah, we do have a few, and thank you for putting up that contact information for people that have additional questions. And the recordings, the sessions today are going to be on demand. The platform will be also open until the 31st. So if people want to jump back in later, they'll be able to get that contact information. But just a couple of kind of a top level basic questions, if you could, Bryan. What are if you could break it down, some of the typical improvements that customers can expect when they use WhereScape for automation?
Well, we typically see 5 to 8 times improvement on the typical project. So your developers have that leverage, because what we do is we take the basic repeatable actions, that the boring stuff over and over again, writing the same code, and we use templates and we automate that. And then that allows you to move on to the more complex stuff, like how do we make this so that we can have our business advantage from our data warehouse and not the mundane things like loading it. So.
All right, and this is kind of a multi-part or multi-department question, if you will. What do your This is going to be kind of specific to your customers, so you can give us a little bit more in the way of examples. What do they usually experience in the way of changes to the overall team structure, development, delivery practices? If you could break some of that down for us, that would be appreciated, Bryan.
Oh, that would be great. So I'd be happy to. That's a great question. So you do end up with more analysts being brought in with this. I think we see quite a few customers that are work hand in hand, because with an automation tool, you can actually sit down in a room with analysts and go, now, is this the data you want? I was on a proof of concept yesterday, and we were doing this exact thing. We were sitting down and they said, well, we really want this piece of data pulled in, and we'd pull it in and it would come across and it would be done very easily. So you end up with breaking down that wall between the users, and that, between the users and the developers. So.
I think I muted myself there. I had a little technical difficulty. Apologies for that, Bryan. So yeah, I wanted to run another one by you here, and feel free to elaborate as much as you want on this one, because I'm sure that a lot of people have this question top of mind, because it's kind of a little fear invoking, if you will, when going to implement this or give this a shot. So what would be your advice for anybody, regardless of the industry vertical that they're in? What would be your advice for anybody considering this journey?
Well, the nice thing is when you use an automation tool, so you can, especially an agile one, you can jump in and start producing things right away. And if it's not right, you can back up. But what I would suggest is you research your needs and figure out which cloud is really the right place for you. So do you want, are you a SQL Server shop? Then maybe Synapse is the right answer. If you're you have everything in Google, or maybe you want that latest and greatest to go to the Google BigQuery or Snowflake. Do your research, find out what's important to your company, and then take your take your automation tool of your choice and start just having at it, because you'd be surprised how quickly you can prototype things, get things implemented, and push it out as fast as you can. What I do in a proof of concept in a couple of days, I did my first data warehouse I built. It was a claims data warehouse, and we built that in 6 months, and there were 2 of us, and we won awards for how fast we did it. And I basically do the same thing in a couple of days in a proof of concept now. So.
And an old seasoned pro at it now. So yeah, we have an additional question from the audience, if you don't mind, Bryan, wondering, can they use WhereScape to load data into an on-premise data warehouse?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. WhereScape is a 20-year-old company, and it started by loading into an on-premise data warehouse. We started with a consulting company in New Zealand, and they wrote their own code to speed up the development of a data warehouse for a very large bank. And then that bank said, hey, can we buy this software from you? And that's where WhereScape come from. So they've been, for over 20 years, we've been automating data warehouses, traditional data warehouses. So I've just brought up how we can definitely help you go to the cloud, but obviously we can help with those other ones as well. So I think Vodafone was one that went to Teradata on premise that we helped them.
I think that's about it. We don't have any further questions, so appreciate the time and the information and in the video, kind of with the case study, if you will. So if you have anything you kind of want to wrap it up a little bit, Bryan, feel free. And if you're all set, I guess we're all good to go. Appreciate having you on here. So do you want to go ahead and do a little closing?
Sure. So the thing to remember is automation is the key to going to the cloud. And then you're more than welcome to stop by our booth and ask questions. We have some people available. And if you need to, you can go to wherescape.com and click on, show me a demo and schedule one. That's what I would recommend, doing those, taking a look at WhereScape. But number one, don't be afraid to go to the cloud, because I think it was in the video where they think 50% of all data warehouses will be built in the cloud in the next couple of years. So, but thank you very much, Bobby. I appreciate the time.
Oh no, thanks so much for joining us, Bryan. We loved all the information on how the teams are using the automation, not only to design, develop, deploy, and operate data infrastructure projects faster, but to better position to address future business change. So on behalf of everybody in the audience and here and us here at Opal Group, again, thanks so much for joining us, Bryan.
Thank you.